Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So this time we're going to be sewing a smart doll dress form just like this one. To make the dress form, we're first going to make a cast out of tape. I'm using a strip of an empty kitchen roll along her back to protect the doll later when cutting it off. I'm also wrapping her in plastic for the tape to stick to. I'm actually using painter's tape and I'm just going ahead and covering her whole upper half of the body with tape. I'm sometimes ripping it into narrower pieces just to get the shape a bit better. And yeah, that's all you want to do, just get the shape as best as possible. And then just for the lower half, I'm using a few of the bigger pieces and then ripping them again to get the nice shape of her booty happening. This does take a bit of time, but honestly, it was also quite relaxing to do this. Just ripping the tape and sticking it on. Although I definitely didn't like the fact that this was my beautiful, expensive doll that I was doing this to. Anyway, it's time to draw the princess seams. So I'm doing this by using a piece of string to try and get it as straight as possible. Like you'll see, I still didn't manage to get it very straight, but oh well, we got something, so that's all good. It was a little bit hard. I do recommend using like something a bit thicker than this string. This is just from sewing because that's all I had laying around, so yeah. And basically all I'm doing is the center front all the way to the bottom. I'm then using the same string to wrap it around her waist so I can get a nice accurate even seam along the waistline. So this was a little bit more difficult, and because of this I just did half the body since I only needed half anyway, so there's nothing to worry about on the other side. So nice and easy this way. And then I'm just repeating what we did on the front, on the back side. This is actually a bit easier with less of the curves, although you know the booty. But yeah, just using the same string to try and get it as even as possible, which is basically impossible, so don't get your hopes out of getting it nice and even. I'm just doing my best as much as possible. And don't forget to outline or keep the gap for that triangle in the back for the stand. And yeah, we get to do that for the side seam as well. And we'll also do this for the princess seam in the front. And yes, I am just winging this here. Probably not the best idea, but I couldn't keep it with the string, so freehand it is. And like I said, now I'm going to be doing the princess seam in the front. So this is basically from the center of the shoulder and then going over the highest point of the bust. At least I'm pretty sure, and that's what I tried. And I'm just trying to find the center of the skirts, which kind of meant winging it again. Probably shouldn't have done that, but well, I struggled with this at that point, so I didn't really mind too much. And finally, the princess seam in the back. So again, from the same center point, so just line it up from the front princess and just all the way to the back. And at this point, I've given up on the string, honestly. It was easier to wing it. For the bottom of the skirt, I first tried to use the string again to keep it straight, but you'll soon see I gave up on that mostly because it just kept sliding down. It wouldn't stay where it needed to, so hey, I've winged this whole thing so far, so let's keep winging it. There we go, it's gone. And I'm just trying to see like what is the straight bit and what's not. I did try to keep the tape as straight as possible. So yeah. And anyway, cutting it off, this is where that piece of kitchen roll comes in handy. So I'm just trying to find it, here it is. And just keep the scissors between the cling wrap tape and the paper roll. This way you're protecting the doll. And I am actually using a box cutter here for that curve because it was too curvy. Which really came in handy that I had the cardboard there just to help protect. So definitely recommend doing that. It doesn't take away any of the shape. So do it. Just do it. If you plan to do this, protect your doll. Just protect it. And then the cast should come off pretty easily with a little bit of pulling and shouldn't lose too much of its shape. And there we go. That's what it is. So you can just leave it as a tape body form if you wanted to stay like this. But hey, we want fabric. That's what we're here for, right? So yeah, just gonna cut that down the center first, just cutting it in half. And I'm just going for it at this point because why not? We've made it this far. And now we're just gonna cut along all those lines. I'm just straightening up the neck, and I'm just gonna cut from the bottom up all the way to the top there. And I did decide to cut this in the length first before cutting in half. It doesn't matter, you can cut it in half first. And this little circle that I'm cutting out from the plastic, I do recommend saving that. It'll come in handy later when filling up the armholes with the cardboard, which I'll show you soon. So yeah, just continue cutting out all of these pieces. And here I just cut slightly off into the side, so I'm just using a piece of tape to tape it back together, and I am just cutting correctly this time. You should have cut it in half at this point, but apparently I still debated on doing that, so yeah. If you're following along with me, just stop what you're doing right now and don't do this. Just don't do it. No, stop. Don't make those cuts. Don't. And no, not that one either. So making these cuts to make them lie flat. Oh, hey, I'm cutting it in half now. Great timing. Anyway, making these cuts, you're essentially making extra darts. So the princess seams should be making most of these shapes anyway, without the extra darts. When you're doing this, the darts, you actually want to make it sewable. So you just want one, just like these patterns show, around like the bust area, just where it's like standing out a bit more and you need the shape. So just keep an eye on that, don't do too many. So these are all the pieces you need. Okay, let's do those darts that I was talking about. And yes, make sure it's only like 1 or 2 darts, nothing more. So last video I mentioned something about tailor's tags. So tailor's tags are really essential actually, and really helpful. So all you want to do is go through, leave a little tail, and then go back through at the same point and leave the loop. Now you're just gonna cut that off, leave a tail again, and just leave it how it is. You're just gonna continue this on the other 3. So there's 1 and there is 2. So yeah, just create that loop and cut that off again. So these are your tailor's tags. So all you want to do now is carefully take the pattern off without taking out the tailor's tag accidentally. So yeah, just hold the fabric nicely with your hand and just carefully peel the pattern off. Just like that, there you go. Some go a bit easier than others, just hold it and peel. There you go. And now you've got the 2 pattern pieces that are holding together by the tailor's tags. So you just want to carefully pull them apart and cut it in half. And just repeat that for the other 2. If one doesn't want to go as much, don't force it. Like, you can try, but I've ripped out a few accidentally. So just leave it how it is and just cut it in half as much as you can. There you go, and that's it. That's how you can make your darts really easily. So you just want to fold that open or like have the wrong side and pinch them together. So yeah, all you want to do is line up those points and you can just sew from one point to the other point. I've gone ahead and sewed all of those darts, and for that centerpiece I probably should have done a center seam and not taken the darts as far in, but oh well, I can't be bothered. So let's sew that first princess seam, and I'm just taking the side seams next. So yeah, just line up the curve. It is a little bit difficult, use lots of pins. And there you go, that's that done too. So let's continue. The side back piece is the same, just make sure to line up the armhole on this one, otherwise you'll have a fun piece. And you just want to sew that as well, and done. And now it's time for the final piece, the back piece. So yeah, same thing as before, just line it up. I'm putting it there. And now that's done too, there you go. That's basically most of the top done. So just sewing this shoulder seams next and turning it inside out. There you go, that's looking pretty good. Well done if you followed this along, the pattern making was the hardest bit. So yeah, not really happy with that center piece, but yeah. So same thing for the skirt. So just continuing the center, then the side front. And I have labeled these with like A, B, and C just to make sure I'm attaching them on the right bits. So there you go, that is front. And now I'm attaching the side. And just keeping attention, like you can see here with the marks, just making sure I've got it the right way around. There you go. Because these are pretty easy to confuse and I don't want to do that. So there you go, that's it. Now the next side back pieces. Yeah, I'm just testing the fit. There you go, the side back pieces. And again, making sure I've got it lined up with C. And finally, yep, lining up. There you go. That's looking pretty good. And then the final piece, the back piece. And just before you sew this, just remember to sew the triangle. So I'm doing this by first cutting out from the pattern just so I can mark it with the chalk on the fabric. So yeah, I'm just using a nice piece of chalk, doing this on both sides. And I'm gonna go in and just hand stitch this, just a nice little border. So I'm just doing a back stitch to get this in place, honestly, using the same pink thread because I was in a pink mood. And yeah, just doing the back stitch, it takes a bit of time. You can make it as thick as you want the thread. I think I just did a double layer, which is pretty good. And I'm just going all the way around. And now we can attach it to the side back. There we go, turn that inside out and you have a beautiful pencil skirt. Well, yeah, you can use this pattern again, so save it. Anyway, let's continue and attach these to the top. So yeah, turning that one back inside out and I'm threading it together. And just remember lining up the back with the back. That's always the most important bit. I am doing my best to line up the princess seams, but somehow they didn't line up perfectly, like not even the pattern, so I did my best. There's like a few marks that actually line up pretty well, but some are narrower, and I don't know why. There you go, but I'm actually pretty decently happy. This turned out pretty well. So now it's time for the collar, and this is just a nice little piece like that, which I ended up hand stitching in place. It was too difficult to show the filming, so sorry I didn't do that. And that plastic piece from the armhole, I am just tracing that on a piece of cardboard twice, and we are going to be covering this in fabric. So this is going to be added into that little armhole later on. And then I'm also going to, while I've got the cardboard, I'm also tracing out a shape for the bottom. And I did end up changing this again to make it a wider shape. So just keep that in mind. You don't want it as wide, like long, but you do want it wider. So yeah, you may have to just test a few shapes when it's stuffed. So probably easier to draw this out when it's actually stuffed. But anyway, I'm going ahead to find the center point here so I can get a hole, which we will use later on. There we go, that's actually a pretty good center. So this is a stick that I'm using that was from a flower shop. They had this left over and it was almost the right size, just a little long, so that was great. So these pieces of cardboard, same for the for the shoulder pieces, the armholes. We're going to be covering that in the same white cotton fabric. So I'm just roughly cutting out a shape that fits around it. It could have been a bit smaller than what I'm cutting out here right now. And I'm just running a basting stitch around the whole perimeter of this fabric. So just run the stitches all the way around. And then you can pull it tight with the cardboard in the center. To secure it in place, I'm just doing a few whip stitches around the bottom just to make sure it all stays in place. When I remade this base, I did do a smaller fabric circle around it, which meant I used a few more stitches to keep it in place, but it actually worked out a bit better and less bulky. And I'm just using the point of that flower stick again to get it through the fabric. I'm not cutting it, I'm just getting the weave to separate. So that way I don't have to worry about hemming that or anything. And now it's finally time to stuff the dress form. And for some reason I didn't film it, so here's a picture of stuffing. You're nearly there, so now it's time to close the bottom, the shoulders and the top. And I'm just doing this by using a leather stitch. This was really hard to film, so these are the only clips I have. But basically you just go through the fabric, go down and then across again. And then you can just pull it tight every so often. And now it's just time for the finishing touches. So I'm using a bead for the top here and just hot gluing that in place to hide the stick. And finally the base. I am using a piece of leftover flooring and just cut that into a square. I made a little hole in the center to get the stick to stay straight up and hot glued that in place. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps my channel out. Leave a comment down below on ideas you'd like to see next, and I will see you all next time. Bye!